that?
I think it's really unfortunate that people equate frugal with being cheap. They are missing out on so much in life because of that.
We do things with gusto. We don't, you know, a lot of the focus seems negative. Like I heard a guy say, yeah, I know you can be frugal, but you know, it's about lifestyle. You know, I don't want to have to be dumpster diving or something. And I just cringe at the attitude. And the reason I cringe is because I haven't had that kind of an experience. And yet I have had the retire early lifestyle. So in this video, I just want to give the viewer a different perspective of what our experience has been through the years, that a lot of times people that are on a delayed life plan may not really be conceiving, as the saying says, what the mind of man can believe and conceive it can achieve. And a lot of times people don't think about the opportunities that they miss, and they only focus on the negative side. And so I just wanted to highlight what some of these ideas are, not because I'm saying that you should do the same thing, but again, just using them as examples, you know, in order to have a picture in our mind of what things could look like, instead of always futurizing, always delayed, futurizing, you know, when I'm 70, when I'm 67, that kind of thing. One of the things you want to be doing when you're living intentionally, in order to have the retire early lifestyle at a young age, at a younger age, depending on where you're at already, or let's just say in the here and now, as soon as possible, we do things with gusto. And so I wanted to bring some examples to you of what the difference is between downsizing with flair and with gusto. And one of the things is that we can focus on quality, not quantity. And so, like, for example, when people are, you know, on the delayed life plan and you're trying to buy a house, like I recently had somebody ask, where's the cheapest place in America to buy a house? Okay. Well, a lot of times people will be thinking in certain terms because they're thinking about getting a loan, and so they're thinking, well, how much house can I get? And so you're automatically thinking about, well, I want to get as much house as I can for the amount of payment, right? Tell the truth, that's what you're thinking, right? That's what we would all be thinking. But really, the way to downsize with flair is to stay out of that game altogether and focus on quality instead of quantity. And so quality instead of quantity means that we're not, I mean, we all want as much houses, you know, as we can get in principle, but not really. There are so many reasons not to go there. And when we do things on a smaller scale, we're able to really zero in on the quality. For example, we built countertops when we got our house. We had Mediterranean style countertops. We also had a big backsplash, which they seem to advertise in all the real estate ads for some reason. We had, Angie likes these darker colored porcelain tiles we put on our living room floor.
Those were not the cheapest tiles.
Those
either.
weren't cheap tiles.
Italian.
And according to
from Italy.
Downsizing with gusto, it's not just because we had a house with a pool. Everything about our house was with gusto. And our frugal friends would look at our tiles and figure out it was porcelain and just, I thought you guys were frugal, you know, like you're supposed to be miserable.
Frugal. Those last way longer than
you're supposed to be miserable and not, you know, what is this?
The cheaper ceramic tiles, those break.
The ceramic tiles, you drop something and it chips and it looks like junk already in a heartbeat. But these porcelain tiles, you know, after 10 years, they look the same as when we first installed
20
them. So
years.
No, we were only there for 10 years.
Oh, but I mean
But they'll last 20 years. They'll last a lot, much longer. And so that's just one example of quality, not quantity. poor me, and doing things cheaply, we would have just put linoleum down. But the linoleum, with children and raising a family, within 5 years would have been garbage. It wears out and scratches and everything with little kids. And so the porcelain was still in excellent shape when we sold the house. So that's another thing you didn't have to do when you sold the house. But even if you didn't sell the house, the porcelain we could have lived the rest of our lives with that porcelain and not done a darn thing to it. But again, that works symbiotic, because when I was younger, living the retire early lifestyle, and therefore I was able to install. If you wait, that's my point here, if you wait till you're 67 or 70, you probably, in most cases, aren't going to want to install your own tile. So the point is, everything is so symbiotic. That's the point I want to also really focus on here, is that we want this intentional living now. We don't want to wait till we're 70. And if you're 70 already, that's okay. You can still live intentionally now. But I'm just saying, if you're younger and you're on this delayed life plan, I'm just telling you, there's another way of doing things, and one of them is to focus on quality, not quantity. And you can do these things because you're intentional, and because you're retire early lifestyle. You do these things, and because you do these things when you're younger, you're able to do them with gusto and with style and with flair, and you can do better than just cheap things out. You can do top quality anytime you want, and that goes with even somebody that's building a tiny house. You could easily, just really just go to town with the tiny house idea. And our house wasn't even tiny; it was not huge. It was 2,000 square feet, but it was beautiful, because of the Mediterranean kitchen countertops and the kitchen floor. We did a special style to it, and then the porcelain in the living room, and I painted the living room walls a custom color, Angie's favorite color, and all of those things I did myself. Didn't cost me hardly anything to do, and yet it gave us that rich feeling of quality. Tell
them about how we did our bedroom floor in the master bedroom.
Well, I've talked about how we did our bedroom floor with stain. We stained the floor. It's kind of very durable paint that doesn't peel, and we painted tiles on the floor, and they looked, and then we glazed them so they were shiny, and people came in and they thought they were actual tiles, but it was just the cost of a couple gallons of stain. And so we did things like that. We just didn't feel, and in line with what that guy was saying, yes, I know I can be frugal, but I don't want to go dumpster diving. The idea being that it's, that you're talking about lack. We had no such thing. And because you're downsizing with flair, you're doing things with gusto, and you're focusing on quality, not quantity. And because you have the time to do it and the inclination to do it, because you are retire early lifestyle, you think differently than those that are convinced and sold that they have to live on the delayed life plan because they think they need to have the same amount of money that they spend while they're working, and even more, which just isn't so. The whole idea here is that you have a different attitude. You have the attitude of the retire early lifestyle person that's living in the here and now, and therefore you're happy, you're rich, and you are doing things with quality and gusto, and you're enjoying yourself as much as you possibly can. And that goes along with other things. It's not just your house. That's just one example.
You should say about how our first year in that house, we paid over $400 in heating, having the central heat
When we
on.
first moved in that house, it had central heat, and the bill came and it was $400. And I remember that was 12 years ago, so that was a lot of money back then for just for an electric bill. And so we said, no way. I installed the wood stove, and all of a sudden the bill went less than half. And so just little things like that you can do that when you downsize, and all of a sudden when you have a wood stove, you're not skimping. It's like the neighbor said, well, with the wood stove, you don't really have to worry about the doors accidentally open. You don't have to, when people are on this meter type of charges, then you're constantly trying to conserve. You see the mentality change? When you procure yourself lots of wood and you're stacked up in wood, all of a sudden it's an abundance mentality where, if the door's a little open, it's okay because you've got the place toasty, and it's
you guys used to open the door.
It's not about, oh, the bill's going to come in and it's going to be too high, or it's going to be so high. Shut the door. It's not this mentality. There's a mentality change, and so this would be part of quality of life. And it's the same thing with food. I see people that scrimp on food and they eat unhealthy foods in order to get cheap food, and it's just every part of your life can just be done with gusto. And I remember once talking to some frugal friends, and they had some friends there, some acquaintances that we didn't know them, and they heard that we were frugal, and we told them that we're eating salmon for dinner, and they got all uptight because they were these professional people that were high earners, and they just, I don't know, I guess a lot of people are really scrimping nowadays, and they're six-figure earners in high cost of living areas nowadays. And that's another thing, is maybe if you're in a high cost of living area, that's another thing that you can do when you're downsizing with flair and gusto and focusing on quality, not quantity. Then you can do things like that. And that's also true in relationships. You get to have extra time when you're downsizing. You get to have the time that you spend with your loved ones, and all of a sudden it's not just this lack of time, and then when you have time, you're just so worn out and tired that...
I think it's really unfortunate that people equate frugal with being cheap. They are missing out on so much in life because of that.
We call it smart frugal. I like to put the word smart in front of it, because there are people that do use the word frugal, and they do have this mentality of lack. So I know that's where it comes from. It's just two kinds of people, two kinds of frugal, and our frugal has always been smart frugal, which always focuses on quality and with flair and gusto and enjoyment. It's always been about abundance, never about lack. And so, all right, so I hope you got something out of that. I hope you liked my discussions about retire early lifestyle. Thanks for coming to the video. Have a wonderful day.